Hey guys, welcome back to the Always in Season podcast, episode number 21. We are officially less than a week from football, so this episode we're just going to cover everything before the week one start.
Yeah, we will have one other episode before the season actually starts, so then we'll go over some, week one predictions and full breakdowns of the games. But first, we're going to start off with weekly news for this week. This just broke like 5 minutes ago. Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel has signed a new contract that extends him through the 28-28 season. So, especially after the comments that Tua made about the massive difference between Flores and McDaniel, obviously Tua's going to be happy about this. I'm sure a lot of other players will too. He's one of the most entertaining coaches in the league.
Yeah, entertaining, energetic. He's one of obviously the younger coaches in the league. Obviously the offense worked very well last year, aside from in the playoffs, but there's no doubt that they know what they have in McDaniels and keeping him around for the next couple of years.
Yeah, so earlier this week, Jamar Chase practiced, and then yesterday, Zach Taylor told us that he was going to be a full participant, and then yesterday he shows up 15 minutes late in street clothes, doesn't practice. He wants a new contract. It's a ridiculous situation. It's really uneasy. Is he going to play week one? What's this looking like for the Bengals? Are they preparing for an offense with him or without him? Because that's a huge difference. Yeah. He's their number one guy.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't really understand it. He's got 2 years left on his deal. It's not like he's going to be a free agent after this year. But obviously, we'll get into some more news with receivers that got their contracts, and now he wants one. So it's a whole messy situation. But yeah, less than a week away, and he hasn't showed up to practice, and who knows if he's going to be there week one.
And this has been the off season of receivers getting paid, so I guess he just wanting his time to come sooner than when his actual contract is allowing.
Yep.
The Arizona Cardinals unveiled their new field level luxury. It's 20 tickets, 10 parking passes, food, and alcohol package, and they cost over $26,000 to $40,000 per game. But if you look at the pictures, it's bougie up there.
I feel like if you look at the pictures, it's like a lot of money for just kind of watching it on a screen. You get to be there, I guess, but again, I don't know. I wouldn't, but some people have a lot of money that they're just gonna have, rent it out for them and their friends and their family and have a good time.
Yeah, I don't know. I grew up in Green Bay, so watching football games, and I've never been a suite person either. I've been invited to watch the games in suites. I used to set up the suites. Not my thing. I want to watch on the bleachers. I want to watch in the actual stadium. So, but it's still a cool feature for those who, want to have that kind of environment. Yeah. So, as we talked about last week, Aaron Rodgers, there's this book that came out recently called Out of the Darkness. And there was an interesting quote that we heard from this book about how it went down with Brett Favre earlier in his time. And he said that every time I ask Favre something, it's, well, you're the first rounder, you tell me. It has been widely known that Favre was the guy in Green Bay. And then they have this first rounder come in who, even if he wasn't as talented as Favre when he came in, he was smart. Aaron Rodgers was smarter than Favre overall. I'm not saying that he had the experience, obviously, but he was just smarter. So Brett Favre, I think, felt that as a threat. Aaron Rodgers was also cocky, where Favre was more of this, kind of fun-loving team guy. Yeah. And so he was just very, cold-shouldered to Rodgers, and their personalities just did not mesh while they were competing for the same job. Yeah. But that was a very interesting quote.
Yeah, I think it's funny to, see that transition, and then you see, a lot with Jordan Love is how Love was more of, an open book, kind of, he took as much knowledge as he could from Rodgers. He obviously changed some things that he didn't like about how Rodgers carried himself in the locker room. But as far as knowledge of the game and that kind of thing, he took a lot of that in. So it's nice to see that Rodgers didn't do the same thing to Love. He could have very easily just been okay, I'm just going to ignore you for the next couple of years, and then you can figure it out by yourself. So, I think it was a really weird situation because then Favre retired, and then he wanted to unretire, and then he got upset, and then he went to go play in Minnesota. So Jets in Minnesota. So
Yeah, and I think it's a really a personality thing here, because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the easiest person to get along with. You can just see that by a lot of things in his life. I think Favre had a big ego to him, especially when it came to this is my team. Yeah. And Aaron Rodgers is this cocky guy, where Jordan Love, he is a very humble, down-to-earth team player, kind of guy. That's just kind of how he
Yeah.
rolls. So it was a lot easier for Rodgers to be a mentor to Love than for Favre to be a mentor to Rodgers. But yeah, still an interesting quote. Everyone should go read that book. I think it's fascinating. All right. We have had so much drama this offseason with Brandon Ayuk, but the drama is over. He and the Niners agreed to a 4-year, $120 million extension, $76 million in guarantees. As Adam Schefter wrote, Brandon Ayuk's offseason included a public trade request, tweeting at Mike Tomlin, posting photos with Jaden Daniels, sharing a FaceTime with Daniels saying they don't want me back, getting permission to negotiate a contract with other teams, and nearly being traded multiple times, yet somehow the 49ers and Ayuk worked things out, and he got paid a lot of money.
I saw a meme yesterday on Twitter. It was like, this could have been an email. It could have been an email. This is a lot of drama for a result that reportedly this was the offer. He got 4 years, 120, which is a lot of money. But this was reportedly the offer that was on the table for 3 weeks. It didn't change, and I guess Ayuk just caved in first and said, okay, I'll take my overpay and be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I don't think, like we talked about last week, I don't think he's even the best receiver on their team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also just not a fan of like the players holding out. I get it. It's just part of the league today. Not my thing. But happy for Ayuk, I guess. Like he got what he wanted, but it's interesting. They have like 8 guys that are making more than the annual average for this season, and then next year they're supposed to pay Brock Purdy, and I'm just not sure how they're gonna make that work. Obviously, it seems like teams always figure it out, but they have a lot of money going to these players. This has been also an offseason full of New Jersey and helmet looks, and so the Ravens have these new purple Rising helmets, and they unveiled that they will wear those Thursday night, November 7th, when they host the Bengals. I love that they chose that game, a Thursday night game against a division opponent. I think that's great. Yeah,
a couple years ago they used to have the Color Rush, which I miss the Color Rush. That was a unique thing that they did every Thursday night. But yeah, nice to see, more alternates. I think almost every team has, I won't say almost every team, but there's new alternates, new jerseys every couple of years. So nice to see them starting something new, and it'll be what seems to be a good game for a Thursday night.
Yeah. So the Jets, there was a report that an NFL agent said that the Jets are in complete disarray and that Aaron Rodgers isn't a team player. The quote says, "There's complete disarray over there. Look at how they've handled Aaron Rodgers. Has one player had more power than him? He skipped minicamp. They have been unable to convert him into a team player. The vibe inside the building is terrible." We don't know who this is. It was just an NFL agent, but it's an interesting report. It's kind of one of the things where there's smoke, there's flames, and so I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, whenever we hear from him, it's like, he's excited about the season and, he's confident in the team, but then all these other reports are kind of like, they're not doing all well. So it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out starting against the Niners week 1.
Yeah, I mean, in Green Bay, Rodgers was a character. I think that's probably the best way to put it, the nicest way to put it. But the on-talent field is there, but if you don't have that locker room presence or that locker room cohesion between your quarterback and the rest of the team, it's not going to end well. So we'll see what they look like, and I think week 1 against the Niners is going to be a great test for them. We're going to see right away week 1 how well they work together and how Rodgers looks after the Achilles and just kind of what their team may look like this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just interesting because once Aaron Rodgers was the guy in Green Bay, the fans loved him. Everybody would just, who didn't love Rodgers in Green Bay? And then over time, it kind of became more of like, I'm getting a little tired of this drama. It's like, do you want to be here? Do you not? And then towards the end, it was like people were so ready for him to leave. And then when he did leave and Jordan Love came and was a starter last season, everybody was like, we don't miss Rodgers. We're so happy that it's Love's time. And it's like Aaron Rodgers going on that same trajectory with the Jets, but just a lot faster. It was like, they traded him for him. They love him. He's the best. And then he gets injured. And then there's this drama of he's not showing up to this. He's saying these things. He's doing that. Drama. What's going to happen? What if they don't make the playoffs? What if they don't have a good season? Are they just going to, what if he has more drama throughout the season? It's a very interesting thing to watch for. So The Vikings signed quarterback Brett Rypien. They waived Jaron Hall. And we'll go over more roster cuts in a little bit, but they added another veteran behind Darnold and Mullins.
Yeah, I think Darnold, he'll have the starting job. He'll be there unless something happens. But kind of a more veteran presence, more veteran quarterbacks in that room. Not really too many high expectations for them, especially with JJ out for the year. It's hard for them to, I wouldn't say, look at this year with, they want to move on to next year already. But again, they have to play this year and see, maybe they have something, but obviously just not where they want to be.
Yeah. So the Eagles, defensive back James Bradbury suffered a lower leg injury in practice, and he'll miss approximately 6 to 8 weeks. That is a tough blow for them. Their secondary is talented, but it's kind of thin when it comes to veteran experience. Mm-hmm. They're really going to be counting on some rookies this year. Talented rookies, yes. but still lack of experience, and so they already didn't have much depth there, so that's a major blow. But hopefully he can come back healthy later in the season. Yeah,
like you said, they have a lot of talented rookies. Quinn Mitchell, one of them, but asking rookies to do a lot early in the season, especially on a team that they hope to be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Could be a tough blow, but thrown into the fire right away, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So we also found out some quarterback news. Patriots coach Gerard Mayo did inform the players in a team meeting that Jacoby Brissett is the starting quarterback and Drake May will be the backup. This is not too much of a surprise. I know some were just hoping to see Drake May right away, but I think this is a smart move. Mm-hmm. Jacoby Brissett had said earlier in the year, that he is basically like a perfect build to be a mentor. Like that's just like he's good at that role, but he's also ready to be a starter. And I'm happy for Brissett to get another chance at this. And if things aren't going well, or just later in the season they're like, we want to see Drake May, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see him play some regular season snaps.
Yeah, they're going to be very patient with Drake May, which they should be. He did play well in the preseason, but don't rush it. If Brissett kind of doesn't play well the first couple weeks, then you can start thinking about maybe throwing Drake May in there. But I think Drake May needs to wait a little bit, learn, and I think there is a good chance he is starting by the end of the year.
For sure. The Falcons traded quarterback Taylor Heineke to the Chargers for a conditional 6th-round pick, so a new backup for Justin Herbert. Heineke has showed some promise a couple of years back, and then has kind of been bouncing around since then.
Yeah, and then obviously with Jaden Daniels in Washington, there's no place for him to be a starter, and maybe Taylor can find a spot where he can be a starter somewhere, but for now, Justin Herbert's backup isn't the worst place for him.
No. So this is something that I am just not a fan of. I find it disrespectful, even though they got permission. But the Giants unretired number 1. It's the first professional football number that was ever retired to give to rookie wide receiver Malik Neighbors. But the family of Ray Flaherty did give permission. But I'm just so not a fan of this. Malik hasn't even played a snap. If you retire a jersey, then you keep it retired. I don't know. I this made me so mad, but it's cool for Malik.
And family gave permission. I guess it's nothing. They asked permission, but you don't see it ever, and it shouldn't ever be a thing. When you retire a number, that number stays retired. But we'll see. We've heard some very promising things about Malik, but again, he hasn't played a snap yet.
Yeah. So in more quarterback news, the Steelers have named Russell Wilson as the starter, and Justin Fields will be the backup. So against the Falcons, we will see a Kirk Cousins versus Russell Wilson as the quarterbacks in that game. Now, I wasn't surprised by this. This is what I assumed was going to happen all along. I don't understand fully why there was so much question. I know the preseason wasn't great for either quarterback, and I know Russell did deal with injuries, but back when the trades and the contracts and everything first happened, all the reports were Russ is the starter. Russ is the starter. Like, when Russ came in, it was still Pickett there.
Yeah.
Before they got Fields, it was like Russ is the starter. And then Fields came in, it was still Russ is the starter, Fields is the backup. And then it became this whole thing once Russ got injured and Fields was being kind of flashy in practice. So it was like, oh, it's a quarterback competition. I think there was a lot more drama around it than actually necessary. I think people, the fans, I guess, or the media were making it way more of this is a looming decision for Mike Tomlin, where I think Tomlin all along was Russ has to really lose this job for it to change. But
I think a lot of it too is Fields is a free agent after this year, and I think some fans kind of want to be like, okay, let's see what we have in Fields, because if he is promising, then maybe we can move forward with him. Russ isn't obviously as young as Fields, but I don't think this was ever a decision that needed this much attention. It was always going to be Russ unless something drastic happened.
Yeah. But I think this is a good decision. Just the veteran presence in there. Give Fields a chance to learn behind Russ too. Dolphins wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. is going to start the regular season on the PUP list. Will miss at least the first 4 games. We've found out a few reports of players on this list, which we'll go over. But I think it's like kind of a tough blow for the Dolphins, but also like he's not their number 1 guy right now, so they have other guys to go to. They have a pretty good depth at the receiver position.
Yeah, like you said, they have depth. They have Waddle and Tyreek there, so there's no rush to get him back. Obviously, he'll help that offense, but yeah, no need for him right now. It's not like they're struggling as far as receivers go.
Yeah, so this was a blow. The Packers running back A.J. Dillon with a neck injury is placed on IR and will miss the entire 2024 season. It was first kind of noted as a stinger, and seemed like it was going to be week to week. And then right when all the cuts were happening, the roster cuts, it was announced that he is actually out for the season. But he's taking it in stride. He is thankful for the organization he has a good relationship with, and obviously his family and support system and everything. And he's trying to come back stronger. But even though he's not the Packers' number 1 guy, it's more of a blow to A.J. Dillon because he was really poised for a breakout year.
Yeah, he was.
He was always more of a bigger back, and then this offseason he dropped down. He was very lean, still had the big quads, but very lean, and so he was really poised for a great season. So that's just a really tough blow. And he and Jordan Love have been really close friends since before the draft. So it's hard that they're not together in the backfield.
Yeah. With their running back situation it was one of those where it's you had 4 running backs that you're okay, I'm confident that any of these 3, and unfortunately, they have the 3 because AJ will be out for the year, and this is a lingering injury from last year, so we'll see what his future looks like, his career looks like, but definitely a guy that if you know him and know what he's all about in Green Bay, he just absolutely loves this place, and I think even after his career is over, he's not going to leave here.
Yeah.
So it'll be, they have their 3 running backs, but we'll just see what happens with AJ the rest of his career and what he kind of ends up doing in the next couple months.
For sure. The Rams traded linebacker Ernest Jones to the Titans.
Yeah, another depth move, but you're starting to see all the roster cuts this week. So you trimmed down to 53, but just a small move for the Titans, but yeah.
So the NFL owners voted on a proposal that will allow teams to sell up to a total of 10% of each team to a list of permitted private equity firms. It's kind of a new NFL that we're looking at. I don't think we've gotten the results on the vote yet, but it's just an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yeah, just selling, I don't know, it's a weird, I won't say weird, but I guess a good way for them to make more money and just to get more people involved with it, but yeah.
Yeah. So another PUP update, Minnesota's leaving tight end TJ Hawkinson on the physically unable to perform list, so he will miss the first 4 games of the season. He's still recovering from his torn ACL last year, but he is expected to still play this season. Yeah,
and they're, aside from Jefferson, I think the biggest target on that offense for Sam Darnold. So it sucks that he's going to be starting on the PUP list, but again, not really too many expectations for the Vikings this year.
So the Titans traded quarterback Malik Willis to the Packers for a 2025 7th-round pick. Good pickup for the Packers. They had 2 backup quarterbacks, and they ended up releasing, cutting, waiving them both. And then they did bring one of them back for the practice squad, but Malik Willis is their quarterback too. And the Titans got a pick for him, so that'll be good for them as well.
Yeah, the Packers, they're really 2 question marks for kicker and backup quarterback. They acquired both. They cut both kickers and both backups, and they went a different direction.
From the Titans.
The Titans, yeah. So Willis is the backup. He's only been in the league for 2-3 years, so he's pretty young still. But again,
he's the same age as Jordan Love.
Yeah,
actually.
He is able to learn behind Love now and a great quarterback coach in Tom Clements.
Yeah, they're both 25 years old. The Cowboys and wide receiver CeeDee Lamb have agreed on a 4-year extension worth $136 million. He will get $100 million guaranteed and a wide receiver record $38 million signing bonus, making him the second highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Another receiver who got his money.
Yeah, I know you and I both were like, this was, of the three that they needed to pay, I think this was the one that they probably should have least looked forward to into who they paid. But nonetheless, he got very similar to Justin Jefferson money. But now they have to, who knows what Dak's going to look like. What I fully believe that unless they make a deep playoff run, Dak's not going to be in Dallas next year. And who knows about Micah Parsons. So,
who knows about Mike McCarthy?
Yeah, that too.
Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel said that Bradley Chubb, Isaiah Wynn, and Cameron Good will all start the season on the PUP. I think Bradley Chubb is their biggest blow there, but also a lot of these, I think teams were kind of expecting. It's more of like sometimes a surprise for like the outside world, but I think a lot of the teams were expecting that this is a very strong possibility. So again, hopefully all these guys who are on the PUP can come back for Week 5.
Yeah, especially the Dolphins that need guys like Bradley Chubb to be there for their deep playoff run that they hopefully can have, bounce or replicate what they did in the regular season last year and hopefully make a playoff run. So,
veteran wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster signing with the Chiefs again.
Again, yeah.
So they did end up getting rid of Kadarius Toney, which again we'll go over roster cuts, but yeah, glad he found a home again. Browns running back Nick Chubb is starting the season on the PUP list and will miss the first 4 games. That is just too bad because his injury last year was so early in the season.
It was a bad injury though.
It was a bad injury, but that sucks because he is such a fun player to watch. But again, hopefully he can be back Week 5 as well. So the Cowboys cornerback Darren Bland is undergoing surgery to repair a stress fracture in his foot, so he will miss 6 to 8 weeks. That's not good for them. No. They don't need an injury in their
secondary again because they had injuries in their secondary last year. Yeah. With Diggs, he tore his ACL in training camp last year, so this is not another good start for them.
Yeah. So more on the Cowboys, we always have drama to update you on. So Jerry Jones on what else he needs to see to give Dak an extension. He said, "You could easily say if you haven't seen it by now, you haven't seen it." Then Dak was asked about Jerry Jones, and he said, "I stopped, honestly, listening to things Jerry Jones says to the media a long time ago. It doesn't really hold weight with me." This is not where you want your owner and quarterback to be, especially going into a contract year. I know a good amount of Cowboys fans, and almost all of them want Dak. They want Dak there. They think he's underrated in the organization. They think he's underrated around the league. He was MVP caliber last season. They don't think he's the problem in the playoffs. Like, all of these things. Yeah. Yet, they seem the least attached, least loyal to him. And I would honestly be so happy for Dak if he gets an opportunity somewhere else where he's appreciated, valued, and can show that he's for real.
Jerry, again, just drawing more attention to himself and the team when I think some fans and some players would just be like, Jerry, be quiet. Like, just let the media, don't talk to the media every day. You don't have to. But that's Jerry. That's who he is. And I'm in the boat that I fully believe that the Cowboys won't win a Super Bowl until he's not there anymore.
You know what could be interesting is because if Derek Carr seems to not be working out with the Saints and they still don't want to start like Spencer Rattler and they don't want to go back to like a Taysom Hill as like their actual quarterback, it'd be really interesting if Dak went to the Saints. Yeah. I could see things working out that way. Like, I could see that going well, you know what I mean? Like, they have pieces, they might get a new head coach too. That could be really interesting. Sorry. This is our last for the weekly news. It was right at the beginning of the week and fascinating. At approximately 7:30 p.m. Central Time Friday evening, several players and members of the Chargers traveling party were standing in an inoperable elevator at the team hotel. Dallas Fire Rescue responded to the incident and subsequently assisted everyone from the elevator one by one through its ceiling panel and into an adjacent elevator. So they got taken care of. I find that, I won't say hilarious because that could be dangerous, but because it all worked out, it's hilarious. Yeah. Because I wish I want to see the video of that footage.
Yeah.
You know?
Very weird. I mean, very weird situation. Definitely one you don't see all the time. But yeah, like you said, it would be interesting to see just one by one, all the guys trying to get out of the small space into their the new elevator.
Yeah. So that's it for weekly news. Next, we're going to go over the preseason week 3 recap as well as the NFL roster cuts. So we're first going to go over the preseason week 3 recap. So we did get to know in our last podcast, but I'll go over it again. Just that the Colts beat the Bengals 27-14 and the Bears beat the Chiefs 34-21. But then for the rest of the games, Jaguars beat the Falcons 31-0. Buccaneers beat the Dolphins 24-14. The most exciting game was 49ers-Raiders, which ended in a tie 24-24 with the most dramatic highlight for an end of the preseason game you might ever see. Panthers beat the Bills 31-26. Lions beat the Steelers 24-17. Packers beat the Ravens 30-7. Vikings beat Eagles 26-3. Texans beat the Rams 17-15. Chargers beat Cowboys 26-19. Jets beat the Giants 10-6. Seahawks beat Browns 37-33. Titans beat the Saints 30-27. Broncos beat Cardinals 38-12, and Commanders beat the Patriots 20-10. So it was really just like those were like the final games for people that try to make or break this roster. Had a lot of good showings from guys, and a lot of those guys did end up making the rosters. And then for some of them, it was just like these teams have depth and they just couldn't keep them, and that's just tough to see. But they're getting picked up by their teams, and hopefully they can make a career themselves. And we'll go over those roster cuts next.
Yeah, I just think I'm gonna pull some interesting, I would say, stat lines. Trey Lance, he was 33 for 49, 323 yards, and he had a touchdown, but he had 5 picks. Yeah. And despite that performance, Jerry was like, nope, he's still going to be on our team. So another one was Seahawks-Browns. 3 Brown quarterbacks played, and I believe they're keeping 4 on their roster.
They were, but then that's one of the roster cuts we'll go over.
Okay. But then, for the Steelers, Fields and Rust, again, had minimal reps. And the other one was Jaguars Falcons. Both Lawrence and Mack played well. And then the last Bills Panthers. Bryce was 6 for 8 for 70 yards. So again, another just bright spot for him. But again, this was all very, very few starters played. Some starters didn't play at all. Like I believe Packers, Ravens, no starters played on either side. But yeah, just these were all like the last opportunity for the guys to make the roster before the roster got trimmed down to 53. So.
For sure. But yeah, it was a fun week 3, and these roster cuts are pretty interesting. And I'm just so excited for the regular season to start. But next up, we'll go over the roster cuts, and then we'll get into some fun topics that we have planned out for this week. All right, so now we're gonna go over those the key roster cuts. We're not gonna name all the hundreds of players that got cut, but starting off with quarterback Desmond Ridder, who was like. He seemed promising out of the draft, and the Falcons believed in him, and then bouncing around, gets cut. Kickers Anders Carlson, which we touched on with the Packers. He has a big leg, like he really does, but he just wasn't consistent enough. Yeah. Same with their other kicker, Greg Joseph, so they ended up both getting cut. Linebacker Christian Welch for the Packers, he had one of the best preseasons. He had a pick in both week 2 and week 3, but just they had a lot of depth. But he did get picked up by the Ravens, I believe. Running back Samaje Perrin. Wide receiver Noah Brown. This one's a tough one. Cornerback Caleb Farley. He has had such a tough couple first years in the NFL. And I think he has a lot of talent, but just hasn't been able to like prove find a real home. Wide receiver Terrence Marshall. Wide receiver Tim Patrick.
That was a shocker.
Yeah.
That was really surprising. It seemed like Tim Patrick and Bo Nix were going to be their future, and I was shocked when I saw he got released.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Cornerback Kevin King, who had a really good showing, too, this preseason, but just still didn't make it. Running back Deontay Foreman. This was the one that I was talking about with the Browns. So they originally had kept 4 quarterbacks, and then they did inform Tyler Huntley that he has been cut. Wide receiver Paris Campo. Wide receiver Kadarius Toney, as we touched on. Quarterback Bailey Zapp, who earlier this offseason people were talking about that he might still be the starter and then ends up getting cut. Lewis Sine?
Yeah, Sine.
That's pretty nice. Okay. Allen Robinson, who did, it seems like, get picked up on a practice squad. CJ Henderson and N'Keal Harry.
I think that the only other one I had was Donald Parham, the tight end for the Chargers. I know he had bounced. I think he had a pretty solid preseason, so I know that one was another shocker. But other than that, I think there were some releases, but again, these guys got picked up pretty quickly. Just some teams didn't need them; they had the depth. So
yeah. So like we said, this week we're not doing like our full on week 1 breakdowns or previews because we will have another episode before week 1. So this week we're gonna do something fun. We will have preseason award predictions.
Mm-hmm.
We will go over our top 3 week 1 matchups, like the ones that we think are the best games, and then we will also go over our own fantasy teams. Alright, so now we're going to go over our fantasy teams. This is a smaller league. It has me, Zach, and then some of my family members, like my dad, brother-in-laws, things like that. But yeah, it's a fun league. I won the championship last year. Zach's joining this year. And let's see what you got.
Yeah, for my quarterback, I had Lamar Jackson. My running backs are Saquon, Devon Achane, Kenneth Walker, Brian Robinson, and Jalen Warren. My receivers are Justin Jefferson, Puka, Devonta Adams, Cooper Kupp, Michael Pittman, and Malik Neighbors. And then I have 2 tight ends in Mark Andrews and Dallas Goedert. I have the Niners defense, and then I have Younghoe Koo as my kicker. So
my quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes and Jordan Love. At running back, I have Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, as well as... Do I have another running back? Oh, Raheem Mostert. And then for wide receivers, I have Mike Evans, George Pickens, DK Metcalf, and Romeo Doubs. At tight end, I have George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, and Jake Ferguson. And then for my defenses, I have the Chiefs defense as well as the New York Jets defense. Then a kicker, I have Jake Elliott as well as Fairbairn from the Texans. So I really like my roster. How about you?
Yeah, I'm very happy with my roster, but I think this is the first time I've been in like a 6-man league. It's very I've never been in one this small, so it's nice to have more talent, higher scoring games, and I definitely more talent on the waivers. You know, if players get injured and this and that. But we'll keep you guys posted on like our records and when we play each other.
Yeah, and it is really interesting doing the small league. I've done big and small leagues, and the smaller ones like. Last year, I remember it's like such a big blow when your first pick, whether big or small league, when your first pick is injured early. But like you said, there is more talent on the waivers. But then there's also these teams where it's like you get these guys who are really talented or expected to do well, and then like they just happen to all like not, or like we had a player in our team player in our league last year who isn't in it this year, but like every week it was like. His guys would perform well, but the other team would just perform a little bit better. Or his weeks would be like everybody was injured. It was like one or the other, but like he just never got like a win. Like it was just like this awful season for him. But yeah, fantasy is fun. We'll keep you updated. But next up, we're going to go over our preseason award predictions. We don't know each other's. Really excited to hear his. And hope you guys are too. Alright, so yeah, next up we're doing our preseason award predictions. We'll kick it off with Coach of the Year. For me, when I'm doing this, it's not necessarily, because these awards are kind of different than what they maybe describe. It's not always necessarily the best coach. It's usually, not always, but usually it's like a newer coach, or, they have a newer squad, and maybe weren't projected to do as well, or, they didn't do well last year, and this coach really changed them. That's usually who gets the Coach of the Year. So for my Coach of the Year, I have Jim Harbaugh of the Chargers. I had a few different choices. I was down between D'Amico Ryan, so I know they did well last year, but some think he got snubbed last year. And then Jim Harbaugh and Raheem Morris were like my options I was going back and forth, but I did end with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I had Jim Harbaugh as well. Based on my predictions from a couple episodes ago, I think the Chargers are going to do very well, and I think Jim Harbaugh is a big reason why. I think he's going to find the Justin Herbert that we've all been waiting to see fully. But yeah, I think Raheem Morris, I think he was the only one that I was like, okay, maybe he could beat out Harbaugh. But D'Amico Ryans, the Texans did well last year, so it'll be hard for him to improve on that. Same thing with guys like LaFleur, who are just, and like Shanahan, those guys that are younger that did well last year. It's hard to improve on that, whereas the Chargers were just a dumpster fire last year, and Harbaugh, I believe he's going to come in and change them immediately. So.
Yeah, so now for Comeback Player of the Year, this is an award that nobody wants to be up for, but if you are, then you want to make the most of it,
Yeah.
right? So the favorite is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's saying. I don't think this would happen based on like I said, I had to like base it off of some of my predictions for like the actual season. So I went with quarterback Anthony Richardson of the Colts because I did have them sneaking into the playoffs. So that's what I went with.
Yeah, the Richardson. I think the big ones were it was Burrow, Rodgers, and Richardson. I think those
and
were
Cousins.
And Cousins. Those were the big ones. Richardson I could see, but I did have Aaron Rodgers based again on my predictions. I think the Jets are going to do well. I think Rodgers is still going to do pretty well. Obviously he's not going to be in MVP conversations, but I honestly think this is his award to lose because he's a heavy favorite. And again, if we see even a glimpse of what he has been in the past, I think he wins this award.
So now for the offensive and defensive rookie of the year, we can start on offense. I also went back and forth on this, but I feel pretty confident that Jaden Daniels is going to lock this one up.
Okay, I love Jaden Daniels. I think he's going to do very well. But based on what I've seen so far in preseason, I believe Malik Neighbors is going to win this award. He's going to be the only bright spot on that Giants team. He's gonna have over 1,000 yards. I fully believe he's gonna show immediately why he's one of the best receivers in the draft. I don't know if he'll be better than Marvin Harrison, but I think with the Giants really only having him to look at, he's gonna have a lot of targets and he's gonna excel right away. So I believe Malik Neighbors is gonna win it.
Okay. For defensive rookie of the year, I went with a dark horse. A lot of defensive rookie of the years are pass rushers. You know, that's what they seem to like voting for. But I went with the dark horse because we did talk about this team earlier in the podcast episode about their depth or lack of depth here, and I just think this guy's going to need to have a great season, and I think he'll get a lot of opportunities to show that he's locked down, show that he's, creating turnovers, all of that. So I have Quinyon Mitchell of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. It's hard for me to pick a corner because it's like that's such a tough award to like win, even like defensive player of the year. Like it's very hard to have a really good year as a corner because like if you have a guy like Trayvon Diggs who just has a bunch of picks, he's a ball hawk. I wouldn't say he's a lockdown corner, but it's like a lot of the times the lockdown corners quarterbacks just don't throw at them. It's just it's how it is. So my defensive rookie, I have Dallas Turner. I think
Who's the second favorite?
Yeah, he's the second favorited. But I think he's going to be a force on that Vikings defense, and I think that with them not really having a lot of expectations, I think he's going to show right away that they made the right pick with him, and I think with him favorited, I think that's the right choice. So
for offensive and defensive player of the year, so for offensive player of the year, I did go with Bijan Robinson.
Interesting. Okay. That's an interesting one because Bijan, and then he did very well last year with the Falcons. And, usually see if a running back wins it, it's going to be like McCaffrey or someone like that. But my offensive player of the year, I have Tyreek Hill.
He's favorited.
He's favorited. I don't really see I don't see him having a down year. I think that he's still going to be Tua's number one target. Again, the fastest guy in football and just a guy that has monster games every couple weeks, and he'll have over 1,000 yards again, and I think he wins this award.
For defensive player of the year, I have TJ Watt getting the award.
I was torn between TJ Watt and Micah Parsons. I went with Micah Parsons solely because this is a contract year for him. He's gonna be like, okay, if they're not gonna pay me, I'm gonna go out and prove that somebody's going to pay me, so they're going to, if they don't pay him, it's going to be their problem. Okay. So I think he's going to have double-digit sacks again, and the leader of that defense, and who knows where he plays next year, but he's definitely going to get a big payday.
For MVP, this has really turned into a quarterback award. I think it's very difficult for running backs to win it these days, and wide receivers, especially with the Offensive Player of the Year award being a thing. Derrick Henry had 2,000 yards rushing a few years ago, and he didn't win it. He didn't even I don't even know if he was a nominee. It's really ridiculous. And also they don't like having the same guy. I don't think they're going to give it to Lamar Jackson again, even if Lamar has a great year. I don't think they're going to give it to Patrick Mahomes. And then you have guys like Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow. Well, if they do well, they're going to be a comeback player of the year. They're not going to be in the MVP conversation. Same with Kirk Cousins. So, like, it's kind of limited. I don't think Josh Allen is going to be up for it. I don't think he's I don't think he's great. I think Josh Allen is really, really good and really talented. I don't think he's great. And I think they also want a new guy. So I actually do have Jordan Love winning it, especially based on my predictions. I think the Packers are going to do very well. And I think Jordan Love's going to be around the same touchdown mark that he had last year and just few interceptions. I think he's going to have a lot of highlights. I think people are actually rooting for him now. So that's who I have winning.
Yeah, I know he's definitely jumped up in the favorites. But I do believe that this year, I think, because Lamar is not going to win it, Pat Mahomes isn't going to win, I think McCaffrey wins it this year. I think he breaks the cycle. I think he has just a year that cannot be ignored. I don't get how this guy hasn't won it yet. Obviously the best offensive player in football, I would say. Non-quarterback, I would say. But with Purdy being still young, I don't think he's ready to win one yet. Maybe down the line he could, but I think McCaffrey has a great year rushing and receiving, and has at least a touchdown a game. So I think he wins this award.
And that's the thing. Like, I think McCaffrey is great. He's gotten a lot of hype. You know, he has the Madden. You know, he's the cover, and so like he's gotten his flowers, just not when it comes to like the MVP award. And he had an incredible season last year. If he didn't get it last year, I don't know if he's going to be able to get it again. But yeah, I mean, I love McCaffrey. I'd be happy for him if he gets it. But yeah, so now that's it for our preseason award predictions. It'll be interesting to see how these shake out. Like, some of these could be completely off, complete flop. But yeah, it's just fun to do. So last but not least, we're going to go over our top 3 week 1 matchups for the NFL season, which is less than a week away. So here we are, week 1 is 6 days away, and we are going to give our top 3 week 1 matchups. Now, I actually made 2 lists because I had my top 3 of the ones like that personally I'm looking forward to. But then I also have a top 3 for the games that I think are truly the best games. So you can start off with your top 3.
My first one, or my third one I should say, is Texans Colts. These two teams that I think are going to be at the top of the division. Richardson is coming off an injury. He didn't play much last year. Stroud and the Texans are looking to improve on their year last year. So I think you're going to have 2 young, hungry quarterbacks and teams that have a lot to prove. And they're just going to both come out firing and show why they're the best team in their respective division.
Okay. For my number 3, I have Rams-Lions. You obviously have the storylines. But the thing is, this is a conference game. And you also have 2 teams who are both going to be fighting, I believe, for the division game, or like for the division win. But if they don't win the division, they're going to be fighting for a wild card with each other. So this right away has playoff implications in week 1, and I think those are the best games.
My second game that I think will be the best is Jets-49ers Monday Night Football. We talked about it a lot. Rodgers, his first game back after his Achilles against one of the best defenses in football, so it'll be a test for sure. We'll see what he looks like, we'll see what the team looks like, and we'll see if the Niners still look like the team that they've been for the past couple of years.
The Jets-49ers game is the game I'm looking forward to most week 1, so of course it's the one I have to wait the longest for. But that did not make my top 3 matchups based on the actual game itself, because it's not interconference. And so I didn't have any, like, my top 3 of the games I'm looking forward to most, none of those ones are interconference. Okay. But of the games I think are truly the best games, are all within their own conference. So for number 2, I have Packers-Eagles. It's the first game in Brazil. I think that's fantastic for the league. We have 2 teams who are both really talented and promising, but they had different seasons last year. Eagles looked great when the Packers were struggling, and then Packers looked fantastic when the Eagles looked like a mess. And they have some new pieces to them both, and I think this is going to be a great way for the league to kick it off in Brazil, and it's the first Friday night game in a week 1 season for the NFL since it's ridiculous. It's been a long time. Like, this is a historic game in the NFL. So I'm really looking forward to this one, and 2 young quarterbacks, you can't get much better than that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these teams, it's like they could go on and win the division pretty comfortably, or they could be like struggling. I wouldn't say struggling, but like, not finishing last in the division, but they could be, not as great as we expect them to. So I think that you have a young Packers team that enough of this, okay, we're young, we're growing, we're like, this is our time now, like the championship window is open. And same with the Eagles, like, yeah, they lost some pieces, notably like Jason Kelce on the offensive line. I'm curious to see what that offense looks like without a guy like Jason. But yeah, like you said, week 1 game in Brazil, Packer fans travel well. I think this will be mostly a home game for the Packers, but we'll see.
Yeah. So now, for the week 1.
My week 1 is Ravens-Chiefs, Thursday Night Football, first game of the year. 2 Super Bowl contenders. Obviously, the Chiefs won it last year. The Ravens need to get over that hump, and there is no better immediate test than Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah, I also have Ravens-Chiefs as my number 1, and it's funny because it's not even on my top 3 of, like, games I'm actually looking forward to. Obviously, I'm looking forward to all of them, but it didn't make my top 3 of, like, oh, I can't wait for this game, but I do think it is the best game. It has all the playoff implications that you can have because, the seeding.
Yeah.
This could be fighting for the number 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we could look back to week 1 for this. Yeah. Also, like you said, the Ravens need to get over a certain hump. The Chiefs don't always look the strongest in week 1, so, how do they look? Like, there's so many different storylines here. We get to see Derrick Henry as a Raven for the first time, which is extremely exciting. So yeah, I think this is gonna be a great game, a great way to kick off the season, and we are so close. Yeah. We are right around the corner, so I am so ready for this.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be a great season. So yeah, that's it for episode 21. Next week we are going to do an individual breakdown of every week 1 game and go over some predictions and things like that.
Yeah.